Okay.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome, welcome, welcome. It is International Women's Day. It is an honor and a privilege to be on with you this evening. Now, y'all know I was on this morning, but I'm back again on this evening. And so I'm honored and privileged to be on with, she says retired, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what retired looks like. Her retired looks more busy than my retired. So we'll just, I don't know, we'll leave the retired off. Officially, she's retired, but otherwise, to me, she is still moving, spreading her um, political and diplomatic information and experience and expertise with the world. With our world renowned ambassador Pamela E. Bridgewater. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you so very much, Julia. It is a delight for me to be with you and your great audience on this International Women's Day. Thank you for the invitation.
No problem, no problem. I was praying about what to do for International Women's Day, and God said, "You're going to interview Ambassador. She's going to be your guest today." And so I'm super excited, over the top ecstatic about it. And so I need for you to take us back to the childhood before the Ambassador title was applied to you, and take us back a little ways to Pamela Bridgewater. What was life like in Virginia and all that good stuff for Pamela Bridgewater?
Well, thank you for that, Julia, because that's where all got started. It got started in the small town of Fredericksburg, Virginia, where I was born. And Fredericksburg, Virginia, at the time I was born, was a segregated city, as was all of the state of Virginia. And I went to segregated schools. That was the law of the land. I had wonderful teachers. My family encouraged me with books, with experiences that we could have as African Americans in Virginia and elsewhere. And so I feel that despite the inequities that our school systems had, I had amazing teachers who took the education of their students to heart. And they put everything into it to make sure that we felt that we could be the best at whatever it is we were to be doing downstream in our lives. So I never felt that I was inadequate in any way or that I couldn't do anything that I set my mind to. So I feel privileged to have had that kind of educational upbringing within the segregated period. So thank you for that question.
Well, being born in 63, 1963, I didn't really understand it fully. I didn't know it fully, and knowing that I was born in a time that was pivotal in history for my family and everything. So I was born in the time where my parents, like yours, were all about education, because my father was an educator. They're all about reading, all about school, all about those good things. And so there was nothing I thought I couldn't do. Nothing. My father said, as long as human beings are designed to do it, you can do it too. Now, so with that village, with that community, with those people around you, your family, and all that good stuff. So, what were like one or two, besides education and everything, what were like one or two additional sayings? Like my father said, as long as human beings were able to do it, you can do it too. So, what are some of the things that, rolling over your head that like that were instilled in you as a child?
Well, I learned from the example of my family that you had to be aware of the community that you lived in. You had to be aware of the social inequities and find ways to rectify them. And when I look back at some of those kinds of activities, I see that that was preparing me for things ahead. For an example, I'm sure some of your listeners may remember or have read about the fact that lunch counters and place establishments such as stores, many of them had placed Black people, such as myself, we couldn't take part in them. We could spend our money there, but they didn't want us to have certain other amenities. We couldn't sit at the lunch counters at the Woolworths or at the then People's drugstores. It's now the CVS chain. But I learned that we have to make a difference. And so I was one of those generation of people who sat in at those lunch counters. We had training about what to do, not to make sure that we didn't involve ourselves in incendiary speech, but that we had a goal ahead and we wanted to be able to spend our money on anything in these stores. So I guess one of the things we learned that you have a responsibility to make a change when a change needs to take place.
I think so. When that to me is being willing to stand up, being willing to, because some people are not being willing to march, even peaceful marches, being willing to say this is not right. I'll do something about it. This is not right. I will see what I can do legally wise, and as well as to make sure that I'm not in harm's way, because we know a lot of people gave their lives for people to be able to live and go to any store. And in Louisville, where I'm from, it was Stewart's and lunch counters and the sit-ins and all that Mr. Lyman Johnson did. And my mother talks about bussing tables and being able to watch him sit at the lunch counter, not being served, not making, a big spiel, but just his mere presence was that. And so he was willing to do it. And then many, many years later, I got the Lyman T. Johnson Scholarship. So it's just, full circle. And being able to graduate from the school where he integrated. I mean, it's a full circle moment. It makes me just pinch myself just thinking about it. So I've got to ask for those listening, and then y'all know how I do. I will have this interview in several places recorded, but I need for you to kind of explain what an ambassador really does. I've seen them on TV. We've seen them introduced in various settings, but I've never had a really clue what an ambassador does and why we even have them in the U.S.
Well, I'm so glad you asked that question because you're not the only one who has no real idea of what not only ambassadors do, but what diplomats do around the world. You hear the name of a diplomat, but what is a diplomat? What is an ambassador? Well, an ambassador is the individual that is appointed by the head of state of the government, and ours, of course, is the president, who represent the president and all the people of the United States in the country to which that person is accredited. And you don't just go to that country after you're nominated. There's a long process. There's a lot of paperwork that has to be completed. If you go through an FBI security background test, your health, your finances, have you paid your taxes? Because if we're representing you, we have to be squeaky clean. That's what's been on the books over the years. And when we go to the countries, a lot of people don't realize we live there. We don't live here in the U.S. When I served as ambassador, I lived in the countries to which I had been accredited. I had to take leave to come home or to go on a vacation there, but my base was in that country. And I also had to go before the U.S. Senate for confirmation because ambassadors are presidential appointments, but they're subject to Senate approval and confirmation. So I had to do that 3 times. And as ambassador, we are in charge of the U.S. embassies in the countries to which we have diplomatic relations. And the United States has diplomatic relations in many countries around the world. We have consulates, which are smaller U.S. entities where there are large countries. For an example, we in South Africa have consulates in Cape Town, in Durban, and in Johannesburg. And in other larger cities, larger countries around the world, we have multiple consulates, and we have individuals called consul generals that manage those so that people are able to get services of the U.S. Consular services without having to come to the capital city per se. That's not the case in every country, but in many countries around the world, we do. But the ambassador is the person that goes to the host nation at the highest level, that country's prime minister or president or what or king or whatever the head of state is, to bring the points from our own country to their country. In other words, we are the voice of the United States overseas. I always looked at my job specifically, and I think we as diplomats do that, is to make sure that we can work together with synergy and to solve problems on trade, on investments, uh, business, without getting into war. So I always felt that it was my duty to try to keep our soldiers um, and service persons from having to solve a dispute by military means. That's just a capsule of what an ambassador does, but it's a 24/7 job, I'll tell you. And our diplomats are to be commended around the world for the work that they do on behalf of all of the people of the United States all the time. Thank you for that question.
Oh my goodness. I mean, that's incredible. Being a woman, being this is International Women's Day. So being a woman, that doesn't mean, we can't handle a lot of things. Being a mother, being a wife, that's multiple hats. But when you're thinking about representing, first off, your country, the soldiers represent their country, but being a representative that is meeting with heads of state, however that's arranged, whether it's a president, whether it is a prime minister, etc. The weight of that has to be unbelievable. I mean,
Yes.
what do you think really fully prepared you for that? I mean, the security that has to go into it, the language barriers. Well, I know you speak several languages, right?
Well, French is the only language I speak with any fluency. But when we are assigned to a country that we call that is a language designated post, we, meaning the foreign service officers or the ambassadors or whomever, have to have a certain proficiency in that language so that we can begin to communicate. However, there are translators when that might be necessary if certain languages are not able to be spoken with the fluency that's needed. But yes, those messages have to be delivered carefully, and we have to stay on point and be targeted in what we say. We don't want to make a slip up because of a language barrier and say the wrong thing. But
Exactly.
yes, but so we do have a language school in Washington. Really, it's actually in Virginia at the Foreign Service Institute's School of Professional Studies, where many world languages are taught to those of us who have to go out on assignments and need language proficiency. And that is particularly important in the consular sections. Now, people know about they hear about visas. They hear about visas that people in other countries have to come to the United States. Well, for those who have to interview in the languages of those countries, those languages are taught at the Foreign Service Institute School of Language Studies, among other things, other
Wow.
trainings. Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, because there are cultural things that I know would have to be determined too as well, because the culture we have here and the culture overseas could be offensive as well. So you got your life on the line, you got your reputation, you got the US. That's weighty. Thank you. I'll just stay in Southern Indiana.
Well, you can stay in Southern Indiana, but you're still at some point, even if you travel. I always used to say to my staff, you may not be the ambassador, but you're still an ambassador of sorts because when
Yeah.
people see you, they see the United States of America. So I always would
Right.
say to them, please behave yourselves. Don't end up coming with a case in our embassy that we have to try to bail you out when you don't do the right thing in a country. And believe me, we've seen quite a few things that shouldn't happen overseas or shouldn't happen anywhere.
Yeah, well, true. I have traveled out of the country, and one of the things that helps me always is my big smile and my eyes, because I'm always smiling. I'm like, you know. So I think a friendly smile can start that. I don't speak French, but I never really had any problem in Paris. So I did really well. My smile helped me a whole helped me a whole lot with
Julia, smiles
navigating the
help.
language.
Smiles help a whole lot, I can assure you. They open doors that you can never imagine. A smile can do that. So I'm happy you use your beautiful smile.
Okay, so I have to ask, what are the presidents that you were appointed under?
Well, the first president to appoint me was President Bill Clinton as his representative to the Republic of Benin. And Benin used to be called Dahomey during the colonial period when it was a French colony. But Benin is in West Africa. And you may have heard of Angelique Kidjo or Jimon Dansu, the actor. Those are people from Benin who have accomplished themselves in the arts, the international arts. So Benin was my first assignment as ambassador. A few years later, I was asked to serve as ambassador to Ghana by President George Bush. And following that, a few years later, I was asked to serve as ambassador to Jamaica by President Barack Obama.
Wow. For those of you who are listening, she has a phenomenal poster right behind her head as we're videoing this of President Obama. And we recently saw him, of course, at Reverend Jesse Jackson, one of his many homegoing celebrations, which brings back a lot of memories of the 60s, 70s, up until now, of all of his hard work as well. So, our condolences, of course, are always with the Jackson family or any of, but our condolences are with us as a country because it feels like we've lost one of our own, one of our uncles, one of the soldiers, one of the generals that has, as they say, gone on to get his reward. So, okay, so three incredible presidents that you've served under: West Africa, Ghana, Jamaica. Which one did you like the best, or did you love all of them?
Well, people ask me that question all the time. And I don't think I'm being diplomatic when I say that each country had something very special to offer to me. And each country provided opportunities to serve and opportunities to make a difference that I never anticipated. You know, we who serve as diplomats and ambassadors are in the U.S. Foreign Service. And I always would remind staff that service is the key word in that whole equation. We have civil servants who stay predominantly in Washington, but the Foreign Service officers, the diplomats, we serve overseas. And so that makes our job a little bit more um, special in terms of the fact that we interact with different cultures and different people at all levels, at all during the times that we're serving overseas. So when I went to South Africa, I was not the ambassador, but I was the consul general in Durban. I was the first woman of color to serve as consul general in Durban. And that was in the province of, then it was called Natal. And after the election of Mr. Mandela, it was named Natal because the Zulu Nation people had their primary residence located in that province of South Africa. And it was a very challenging period because there were conflicts regarding who the Inkatha Freedom Party and the African National Congress, they were at odds on things such as the Bantustans and the way forward for South Africa. And so those are really difficult, challenging times. So I had the opportunity, and I feel it was a great opportunity to try to help all the South African parties with whom I worked find a way forward to have their peaceful elections. That has to be something, Julia and listeners, that a person like me from Virginia would never, Fredericksburg, tiny little town, segregated community, ever think that I would be on the cutting edge of something like that. To be able to sit across the table like I'm sitting across from you virtually with Mr. Mandela and others and Chief Buthelezi and work with my then ambassador, several of them. I had three ambassadors because I was there for 6 years, and other parties to iron out differences. And that is what makes diplomacy so important. And that is why I just am so still much involved in mentoring young men and women who are interested in foreign service and international affairs. Of course, when I went to Ghana, Ghana, of course, was the first country in sub-Saharan Africa to have its independence. It recently celebrated 69 years of independence on March 6th. And the relations between the United States and Ghana go back to the days of Kwame Nkrumah, who was Ghana's first president. He visited the United States after becoming president and shared conversations with then President John Kennedy. And subsequent to that, there have been presidential visits on both sides: President Clinton, President Bush, President Obama, President Jimmy Carter. They all visited Ghana. And Ghanaian presidents visited the United States: President Kufuor, President Jerry Rawlings, President John Adam Mills, and of course, President Nana Akufo-Addo, and the current president, John Mahama. So those kinds of relations were very important. And Ghana celebrated its 50th anniversary of independence, its jubilee, during my time as ambassador. And you mentioned Reverend Jackson, and I was very pleased to host Reverend Jackson amongst many congressional members who came for Ghana's 50th independence. So that's a great memory that I have to share with him. And Jamaica, many people know of Jamaica and how important Jamaica has been in culture, not just music, art, cuisine. Everybody knows about the jerk chicken, but there are also
Yes.
bilateral issues, meaning country to country issues that have caused hiccups in the relationship. So when I served as ambassador, when I got there, the United States had not had an ambassador in Jamaica for over 15 months. So there had been issues, and I'm not going to tell all of this because you're going to ask me about my book. A lot of this is in the book, so I'm going to let your readers buy the book and read some of that.
Absolutely.
I had to.
Oh no, we're gonna tell them how to get it. I promise you.
Okay.
I promise you.
But when I went to Jamaica, I had to use all the tools in what we call our tradecraft, because even though relations at that time were strained between the United States and Jamaica, I wanted to find ways to smooth and get those relations back on an even keel. So I not only used traditional diplomatic platform, but I also used cultural sports activities. I created an ambassador academic achievement for high achievers in the schools. We brought scientific persons such as Neil deGrasse Tyson and Dr. Mae Jemison, the first woman of color to be in space. So I use a lot of things to show Jamaicans that our relationship was broader than just the drugs, the narcotics. That was a part of a bigger picture.
Right, right. Absolutely, absolutely. So you mentioned about mentoring young men and young women to be in the diplomatic corps or any part of governmental diplomacy or being future ambassadors. So, what are some of the things, like just one or two, that you really stress for them to really think about and to really be prepared? Because we're in a very volatile country. We're in a volatile international relations are just very, whew, it's a whole lot going on. But what do you're about, even taking from your name, Bridgewater. So you're built about building bridges, making connections, doing all that. So one of and making our relationships as best as possible, given all of the situation going on. So, what are one or two important things that you really tell your mentees who are seeking your guidance to navigate?
Thank you, because many of them ask the same question. And one important characteristic, I think, is to be an active listener. And I don't mean simply being quiet when someone else is speaking, but really trying to process and understand what it is that individual is saying to you, and going the second step after listening, but then asking a follow-up question to ensure that you are understanding exactly what it is that individual is saying, and that you are not putting your own interpretation on what you are hearing. But listening actively is so very important in the work that we do. And also trying to find a solution where both parties feel that they have gained something in this whole process of negotiations. And that is why it is so important um, to, to listen, because you will then really, I think, hear what the individual is trying to say. And then a second thing that individuals have to do is, I believe, avoid incendiary language. You can be forceful, but not necessarily be fiery in your speech. And that is something I truly believe in retrospect when I think about my grandfather, who was a social activist and a pastor. But he lived in the period of Jim Crow, and he wrote letters to the editorials about um, ways that Blacks were referred to in newspapers and all kinds of social issues. But it wasn't incendiary. It didn't incite people to be ready to fight, but to find the way forward. And believe it or not, I didn't really know about my grandfather's actions until I found some papers that he had left, that my mother had saved. But in reading that, and in, I guess, seeing and hearing my family, this was not the way that they interacted during the periods of segregation, but they found solutions to problems in these ways. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that that is, I mean, that is really important because that's being able to do that and being able to come to the negotiating table, point out the problems. We gotta know what the issue is, why
Yeah.
we have a problem, but using those, and I even tell my husband this a lot. You can't use all in those generalized statements that because they may not apply. They may not be for everything, and it's not everybody doing the everything that you're saying. We've got to come to a common ground because otherwise, that's how wars do start. That's how fights do start. That's how disagreements do start. And of course, we can tell from your, as they say, your experience, your expertise, and track record. You know how to bring it together so that people can come away. We may not always agree on everything, but we do have a lot of things that we can agree on and agree more rather than just come away from the table with nothing. And I think that that has to do not only just in international relations, which we're talking about International Women's Day today, but that becomes necessary in our day to day here in the U.S. No matter where you are in the country and where you are in the world, because being able to for both sides to take a win. Now we all may have to take something that is less than what we want, but being able to see where is the win-win and not just one-sided is incredible. I have to think about that every day in my own business. You know, what am I bringing value to the table and what value is coming back to me? And
Well,
that's just in regular
absolutely.
business sense. And
Yes.
I can
And in
only
our own
imagine the
personal
international thing. That's amazing. Yes, ma'am.
Absolutely. And in our own personal relationships, I think that we can bring some of those same things to the table to help us in our own personal relationships. Fathers and sons, mothers and daughters, families, husbands and wives, sisters and brothers. We all can bring those kinds of things to the table, I believe, to help us and move forward in a more positive way. And we do need that. And thank you for saying that.
No problem, no problem at all. And we see an example. That's what I tell people all the time. Is I said Ambassador Bridgewater is clearly an example of not only Black history but women's history, international history, a part of all of it. And we're grateful and thankful to have the opportunity to be able to um, as they say, be able to touch you in some ways. In the area where we are, we can actually physically touch you, or Virginia, or wherever you are, literally around the world. But there are some times that we know of people that have done great accomplishments that we were never able to meet and never able to ask a question and never able to go back and forth. And so I do have one comment from Ms. Kelly Gar. It says, "What an amazing experience." And I wholeheartedly agree. And that's one of the main reasons why I wanted her to be here as an example, not only for her international works, but being a woman and being on international stages. So, all right. So I got to transition to the book because that was as a author and a publisher, I'm still pinch myself like she chose me. Tell us about I'm just going to tell my personal experience, and I know I've told it to you many times, but just the mere fact of, and you have to get the book, because being able to um, purchase and have in your hand a memoir with so many historical, very notable figures. First off, yourself is on the cover, but when you turn it over just to the back, you haven't even opened it up the inside. You see a picture of Ambassador Bridgewater along with Mr. Nelson Mandela, which is, I mean, just it blows my mind every time I look at it and go, "Oh my goodness!" So that is, history right and before us, looking at us. And then when you open it up and see all the experiences she had, and this one called, and this one referred, and this one recommended, and this one said she should be nominated, and she should try for, she should submit for, and just see a path that, of course, we know God is leading, the plan and purpose for our lives. We may not, start where we start, but He has a way of grooming us and training us and preparing us, and family wise, it's an incredible story, and it's an incredible book that I believe every woman should have and access to, because the hills and valleys and ebbs and flows, and we've got this problem, and this is how we're going to solve it, and it's got a little mystery, got a little thriller in it, because I was turning the page going, how's she going to get out of this? How's she going to get into this? It was a wonderful, wonderful experience, as well as seeing the presidents that she served, the historical figures, and the ladies that are inside of it. It is amazing. Um, so first off, Ambassador Pamela E. Bridgewater, for signed copies for booking. I'm gonna say this right off, even before I get into the writing. To get signed copies, for booking, for speaking engagements, any of those, she prefers that you email her. So go to 25, that's 25 BOTW, which stands for Bridge Over Troubled Waters, but just use the initials BOTW at gmail.com. And she has a team that is waiting for your order, and they'll handle everything from there, because I feel like, fortunately, she may not be able to physically get everywhere, but thank God for technology, she can virtually get everywhere, as long as her schedule allows. So be sure and request her to be a part of your gatherings. She's, schedule's full, but go ahead and request it, because I feel like this is really important for not only this generation, but the next generation to come, to be able to ask and, as they say, sit at the feet of greatness and people that have accomplished much. We need to make sure that we understand who they are, understand what they went through, so we can learn from it, because success leaves clues. And thankfully, we have a whole memoir and and a book, but we still have the person here. We don't have to say, "Oh, one day, I wish I had." No, I'm not going to do the woulda, coulda, shoulda. I have her on, yay, video and everything, yay, super excited. So first off, tell me, how long did it take you to write it?
Well, I want to first give a shout out to you, Julia Royston, because when I got my book to a point that I thought it might be ready, I knew I wanted to have a woman to publish it. And I felt extremely fortunate that I learned about you. You had published some books for members of the New Zion Baptist Church community. My husband, Reverend Russell Alkert, has been pastoring there for 53 years. And then when I learned you were in Jeffersonville, and we have a condo in Jeffersonville, I thought, this has got to be providential. And then I asked if we could meet. And I said from the onset, this woman is about business. And I was very grateful that you considered my book worthy of your talent in publishing it. So I would like to give a great thank you to you for accepting to
My
do this
pleasure. My
because it is an
pleasure. My
honor for
pleasure.
me. Well, you know, when I retired from the Foreign Service, um, it was 2014. I thought I was going to begin immediately after a little bit of downtime to start putting together my memoirs. But, retirement is a misnomer. I feel like right now I need a sabbatical from my retirement because it has been completely active and booked with boards and speaking and consulting. But I started finally to put this really pen to paper because I had encouragement from a judge in Cincinnati, Ohio, who learned about my work through some volunteer work I had done with an organization he worked with in Kenya. And he said, Ambassador Bridgewater, you have to now turn all of your attention to the memoir and put everything else behind you. And every day, Judge Tyrone Yates wrote me, "Where are you now, Ambassador, on your book?" He stayed with me until you took it over, Julia, and published it. So I'd say it took me a good solid 2 years of solid writing and editing and back and forth, not piecemeal. And I learned that if you want to write your story, you're not going to know how to do it all from the onset. A memoir is different from a novel. And so I learned that the thing you should do is to write down all your stories. Then you can find a way to put them together in a thread that makes sense. And that is how I approached it. Looking at my schedules from my times as ambassador that tweaked my memory on the things that I did and the people that I met. And that is how I got that story. And I had people to read it. I had people that I worked with to look at it, to comment, because they would remember things and they would comment. I wanted it to be accurate, but I wanted it to be readable and relatable to the audience. And everyone has told me that it is. And so I'm happy about that.
Absolutely. Well, most of the time when people are telling their personal stories, personal narratives, memoirs, it has dates. It does. It has dates and this happened and who was there and all the parts, but we normally don't feel the heart of it. Like we don't feel like we were there. We don't get any of the emotion with it. Now, Ambassador's book is totally different. We not only know what happened, who was there, dates, times, things that she wants to share, but we also feel the heart of it. Like we're actually in the room. She puts us there. She puts you in the place and you're feeling it. You're the waves and the on the tiny boat and the you know how it felt to actually be there. Even though there's not a video that's going on with it, there's a picture, but you really feel it. And that's one of the differences with this memoir that I really want other authors who are thinking about it, who hear about this or see it, and know that you have that desire. Make sure that people can feel it, as well as the old. Okay, I'm telling my age. Dragnet, just the facts, ma'am. Not just not just the facts, ma'am, but also the emotion that goes along with it. Because people they understand the emotion of it, and then that takes makes it seem like it can be believable or achievable. And for women, myself, I'm emotional, so I want to know, okay, this emotion is normal, this emotion is normal, but we got a job to do, we got a job to get done. And one of the things that I always have to point out is ambassador can mobilize a team. That is what only one of many things, but one thing that I really gathered from the memoir that I've really taken to heart is that she can galvanize a team and move people to action to get it done, no matter how short the deadline is. Somebody shows up and we weren't quite ready for them, but by the time they arrive to the building, everything is in order, everything's working properly. So I love that because I'm like, ooh, how's she going? Ooh, what happened? Ooh, wait a minute, let me turn. Now I'm editing, I'm formatting, I'm laying out, but I'm still reading and turning the pages. And so that really, really always let me know. Okay, no matter what state you're in, you have a job to do. You have something to accomplish. And these emotions, whatever you're feeling, whatever shush, you got to get those under control so that you can get a job done. Okay, so did you do team sports? What happened? How were we able to galvanize a team that easily?
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned the whole notion of teamwork because for me, I always have said to the staff that I've been with that any success people attribute to me, it's attributed to all of us together because I can't do it alone. But what I always make a special effort to do is to empower those around me, particularly the entry level officers, those who have to learn the trade craft. I, in one of my posts, I encouraged first tour, first assignment officers to have a stint in the front office, which is where the ambassador is, so they could see my job, my day to day work, so that they could understand how the whole mission has to work. And then I also encourage them and let them know that everything they did is not going to be perfect the first time around. But what I wanted to make sure they do is that they had all the tools that they needed. And then we worked together to find a way forward if they didn't do it exactly right the first time around. But if they put forth every effort, that is what we do as mentors. And that is why you have a team that will support you and go, as you say, go the distance for you and with you. And my teams, I've been very fortunate that they've done that because they know I genuinely care about them, their professional development, but also their personal development because you have to have a holistic approach to life. There has to be a work-life balance. And I try to display that, though sometimes I show up on days they said, Ambassador, the Marines would say, It's the holiday. You're not supposed to come into work today, you know, because I just didn't remember sometimes that we had official holidays. But you have to have a good work-life balance. And we as women sometimes don't do that enough. We don't have enough self-care. And I will be the first to admit I'm a little bit guilty of that. But I'm making a trying to do better in 2026. But it's just so important. And you mentioned earlier, Julia, about all the things that we as women can do and have done simultaneously. And they talk about multitasking. Well, women created that concept. We are the
Yeah,
ultimate multitaskers. And, we are, but self care has to be a part of what we are and what we do.
absolutely. Absolutely, absolutely. And just having that ability because in this climate, so hopefully those who are listening will take note that it does take a team to make the dream work, a teamwork to make the dream work, because
Mhm.
we have a tendency that when we get into higher levels, I don't care if you're in the diplomacy or ambassador in that political arena or not, gatekeeping is an issue where I've got a secret, I know something, and I'm not going to tell you, and it has nothing to do with confidentiality or a non-disclosure agreement. It's just that you're not wanting to divulge that, and your ability to what I want to say, your ability to have first year, first time to see the back room, the inside, as they say, get in the kitchen and figure out how it's done is incredible because that's a testament of who you are as a person. And I think anyone in any leadership, I don't care if you're leading a PTA or a committee at wherever, you've got to make sure that you understand that it's going to take a team. It's going to take a lot of people. It's going to take more than you just, yeah, you leading it, you out in front, but it's going to take all of us to definitely work together. Okay, so last question. What inspires you now? What is inspiring you to keep going and to keep moving with a very hectic schedule, I might add?
Well, what continues to inspire me is when I meet particularly younger audiences and see their enthusiasm and hear the questions that they pose and know that we still have, despite all of the noise around us, and we all agree that there's plenty of noise around us, but they still have a desire to serve. they still
Yeah.
have a desire to make a difference in the world. And that is really what I believe we're all put on this earth to do, is to make a difference in the lives of somebody else. And that is what continues to drive me, Julia, is to find those ways that I can continue to make somebody else's life or some other entity or some other project or program a little bit better, a little more empowered, a little stronger than it was before. That is what inspires me to keep going.
Absolutely. And this generation is different too, in that if it's something that they're not passionate about, or if it's taking them too far out of their comfort zone, they'll move on. They will not be a part of it. If it's something that this generation is different, that it will not, if it's not really striving to better someone else, and it is taking them too far and it expands their capacity a little bit too much, they will let it go. And so my nieces that are in their 30s now, they're like, Aunt Julie, I don't do that. Oh no, Aunt Julie, I'm not going there. Oh no, after that time, I don't answer the phone. Oh no, I don't. And I'm like, oh, okay. Y'all got boundaries. They have limits. They have whatever the capacity is. If it supersedes it, they cut it off immediately. So I think their longevity and the ability to serve and to serve others is really on a high level. So, but they still need mentors, and they still need you to tell them how it's done and to navigate some of those old school ways that have not been necessarily torn down yet. And so you have the expertise and knowledge to be able to do that. Now, we'll make sure that we strive to get some self care in there, fun, massages, pedicures,
Yeah.
manicures, all that good fun stuff to balance it out. But then we need for you to get back on the speaking trail so we can learn some more, and so that we can take this country to the next level and be all that we were meant to be for the next generations to come. So, for organizations, women's groups, schools, colleges who want Ambassador Bridgewater to come or to speak virtually, etc. Her technology works beautifully. Email her at 25botw@gmail.com. You can get copies of her books there. It's Bridge Over Troubled Waters. It is available, but I want you to get signed copies. Yeah, Amazon, everybody's got it. But I want you to get a signed copy directly from her so she'll know exactly who got it, and then you'll be able to get her signature on it, which is definitely a keepsake for the next generation to come and continue to do so. So, Ambassador, it's been my honor. It's been my privilege. Thank you so much for celebrating International Women's Day with us today. This year, and we pray God's continued blessings and security and safety over you and Dr. Ockard, who is, um, wow, a staple in this community and around this country, and of course around the world, wherever he is serving people everywhere and being a blessing to many. He's been a blessing to my family many times, and I'm greatly appreciative for his relationship. And now with Ambassador, it just adds. It just adds to my wealth of knowledge and information, and I appreciate it. Thank you so much for being my guest. And you know how to find me, you know how to find her, and email her at 25botw@gmail.com. Until next time, always live your best life and be all that God intended for you to be. Until next time, be blessed. Bye bye.
Goodbye.